Hello and welcome back to the Wrinkled Runner. I wanted to talk about not a run or a race, but a Mammoth March. For those of you who don't know, a Mammoth March is a 20-mile hike, and some events also have a 30-mile hike. So I did this last month, and I'm telling you, it is a challenge, even if you are a marathon runner. So hiking uses your leg muscles in a different kind of way. And I'm actually at the end of a marathon build, and I'm doing Richmond this Saturday when I'm doing this recording. And when I did this march, it was about 6 weeks out. But at the time I signed up for the march, I didn't know I was going to be running the marathon. My fitness business is mostly run coaching with strength training for my runners, but I also take on some strictly personal training clients as well. So one of them is always up for a challenge, and I love that. So I found this Mammoth March on my Facebook feed, and I thought it would be an excellent challenge for her and us to do together. At the time, I was training for the Buffalo Marathon, which was at the end of May. Now, because of our winter, it was just ice all the time. It wasn't safe to be training outside. So I'm not afraid of the cold. I use Yak tracks in the snow, but we are talking roads and sidewalks just covered in ice most of the winter. I don't have a treadmill. I'm definitely on the side of those who call it a dreadmill. But I'm actually thinking of breaking down and getting one because I deferred my Buffalo Marathon to next May since I wasn't getting the training in. So I feel like I have to do Buffalo no matter what the winter may bring. Anyway, I signed up for this Mammoth March and I had to put together some training for it. So hiking is not my specialty, so I did a lot of research on training, strength work, and how it's different from like marathon training. So we did not hit all the things that I had wanted to do in training. A lot was going on last summer, but we got in some training and I think it went a long way for this Mammoth March. If you're interested, I'll absolutely put a link in the description to their website. They have events all over the country throughout the year, and this one was in the Hudson Valley near New York City. So after I deferred Buffalo, I really wanted to still do a marathon for 2025. So I signed up for the Richmond Marathon. And one of the main reasons I wanted to do that one is because my son and his wife lives there. So when I signed up for Richmond, I hoped the hike be kind of like a cross-training thing, but also act as one of my longer runs in the leg fatiguing department. So throughout the summer and early fall, I was combining marathon training with hitting the trails. So we did a 5-mile hike and a 10-mile hike. One, to make sure the shoes and day packs that we bought were going to work for the 20-mile one, and also because we just didn't know like what a really long hike was going to be. So we bought the Salomon Speed Cross 6 GTX, which is a trail running shoe. We didn't want anything heavy and boot-like. I wore hiking boots once years ago, and it was not even near 20 miles, but my toenails turned black. They eventually fell off. The hike hurt like heck. So I decided to go with a shoery shoe, and I will say that they are amazing. They had no slippage on wet rocks. They felt comfortable throughout the hike. I highly recommend this shoe. And we were glad we got in these practice hikes because walking on pavement was way different than walking in the woods. So even though we covered a bunch of mileage in training on regular sidewalks or bike paths, the trails in the woods were really what gave us the best practice and confidence. So the day before the hike, we drove up, which ended up being about a 5.5-hour drive. And you can pick your start time, and the earliest I think is 6:30 or 7. We picked 8:15. So you then have 8 hours to get to a certain point. For our course, we had to get to mile 17 and a half by 4:45 p.m. Whether you started at 7 or 8:15, that was the cutoff. If you don't hit that mileage by that time, they shut you down. They put you in a Sprinter van and you go back to the start. So all this was running through our minds when we got to the parking lot. And I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I thought it was just going to be like us skipping along the trails and, having a good time. And then we see like a bunch of people. So yeah, this is a big event. There was a very long line to check in. This particular state park required participants wear a bib number. So you had to get your bib, you had to pin it on, and then get into another super long line. They only allow up to 5 people to go at once with like a 30-second stagger. That prevents 1,000 people from starting at once. But because things were kind of chaotic with getting the bibs, there were people still in line waiting to start who had been there for a long time. So we finally made it to the start about half an hour after our time. We got started, it was great. The path was really well marked, but I guess in the beginning, some goofball decided to change the signage. So those beginning people were going the wrong way to start right off the bat. But they fixed that, and by the time we got to that confusion, it was over. So the first 4 miles were pretty easy. It was in the woods, thank goodness, because actually it was getting hotter and hotter. The high that day would reach 85. One thing I would recommend is know when the aid stations are. In our heads, we thought it was going to be like every 4 miles, but the first one didn't happen until mile 7.5. They have to set it up, obviously, where the roads are, and they have access to it. But once we got there, they had lots of snacks, protein bars, water refills, electrolyte tablets, porta potties. The aid stations were fantastic, really well stocked. My only complaint, and this is probably petty, but they said there would be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I was thinking like Uncrustables. Instead, there was someone actually manually making them. So for me and my girl, it was kind of an ick. Now they were wearing gloves, to be totally fair, but I don't know, I didn't take a sandwich. But there were lots of other things. So at this point, people were already dropping out, and this hike was very, very rocky. You're on a lot of unstable ground, plus in the Catskill Mountains. I mean, there's a lot of elevation, so you're going up and you're going down. I would not recommend doing this in sneakers. Get something hiking specific with a good grip, which again, the shoes that we had were spectacular. So we made it to the next stop, mile 12. They had water, a few snacks, porta potties, still well stocked though. And somewhere around the 12 to 13 mile mark, a whole bunch of people were actually turning around and heading back to the aid station at mile 12 to pick up the sprinter van. So you have to be prepared to go forward to the next aid station or turn around to head back to the previous one. They won't pick you up otherwise, like in the middle of all this. They knew we reached the station because someone wrote down the bib number as we came in. And they had a sweeper guy at the back at the end, so you would be sort of tracked, and they knew we hit each aid station, but they made it really, really clear. If you leave a station, you can't quit until you get to the next one or turn around and go back. There was a lot of uphill switchbacks, scrambling up rocks. Some people had walking poles. We didn't practice with them, so I think trying to use them like fresh out of water would have been a total disaster. This particular path was not very wide either, so we were often in front of or behind each other. It was hard to pass others as well. It's kind of hard to describe how it would have been difficult, but getting around someone in a lot of situations, even if you said on your left, would have been hard. That said, it was a beautiful hike. There was gorgeous views. But towards the end, you just kind of don't care. You're just trying to get through it. We had to get to mile 17.5, like I said, by 4:45. And it was after 4 before we saw mile 17. So I was starting to panic a bit. Once you hit that checkpoint, though, you're good. You're not going to be pulled off, but you have to go 17.5 miles in order to get to that point in that time. So we were kind of booking it after that point, and we got there around, I think, 4:20, 4:25, somewhere in there. We were good. There was a huge circle of chairs of people that were giving up. They were waiting for the sprinter van, but me and my partner were like, there's no way we are not getting that medal after 17.5 miles. So we kept going. Right around mile 18, there was an incline of just rock. It was just rocks. It went straight up. It felt that way. People were stopping to rest, and I'm like, if I stop, my legs are going to cramp up. I will freeze. I will not be able to go any further. So we just hit it. We just kept going, to get to the top. But every time we felt we had, this has to be the last incline, there'd be another one. So we were so done with this by the last mile and a half. And that was on the road to where we started from. So we saw the finish line and we both kind of were like, let's go. So we just start running, and we ran out the last, say, 300 yards. It actually felt really good, even though I was in a lot of pain with my feet, but it felt great to run. So we got our medals. They don't chip it for time, so it's not really a race. Finishing it is actually the goal. So a lot of this is mental, just like a marathon. This one, the Hudson, is known as being really, really hard. So I would like to do another, just not that one. I got a few blisters, not a ton. It was very strenuous, but we did think it was awesome. After we thought, people who haven't done this particular one and other people will never know how difficult this actually is. Now, I will say there is a difference in how my body felt after this hike versus like a long run or a marathon. It was mostly in the quads for me from going downhill, the shoulder blades from carrying a pack, and my feet hurt so much more than running. I do think training for a marathon was helpful because I'm mentally prepared for long distances, and strength training definitely helped as well. The question is, did it hinder my marathon training? I was really, really nervous about that. We hiked on a Saturday. I do my long runs on a Monday. So the Monday after, I just went out for a run, and I was just going to do what felt good that day. I didn't put on the schedule any kind of mileage. I ended up being able to do 10 miles, and I ran it well, and I didn't have any pain. So it was a down week for mileage for the marathon, so that was lucky. I felt like I bounced back quickly, and I feel like it did enhance my marathon training. It's all endurance. A week after the hike, I had a 20-mile run. That went well. So the fear that it would ruin my marathon training was gone. But should marathon runners do events like this during training? This is not something I would have ever recommended to any of my clients. I spur of the moment decided to do this fall marathon while doing the Mammoth March training. So that had come first, the March. That being said, and because I went through this, it depends on the person. I've been running marathons for 8 years, and I've been running in general for over 20. So I'm well versed in endurance. My body is used to it. For me, I think I can handle it. It just added to the endurance portion of my training. It was pretty good cross training also. When you do something different, you see how the mental aspect that you've trained can translate to another endurance sport as well, but also how you have to adapt. So when you run a marathon, you know in your head how much more time is left. So when you're doing an 8-hour hike, or in our case, closer to a 9-hour hike, that's a lot longer. So you need different strategies as well. It also shows you can balance these events, and you're trying to do all that within your training. That 10-mile hike we did really pulled us through. It gave us a ton of confidence, and I would not recommend going into this 20-mile hike blind with zero training. But I'm already thinking about my next one, not the Hudson Valley, but I'm looking at Letchworth State Park for 2026. I'm actually putting together a training package for people who want to train for the Mammoth March. And there'll be strength training in there, practice hikes, and gear familiarization. I'm fleshing it out now and hope to have it ready in early 2026. If you're a runner, I do think that this could be good cross training if you're smart about it and if you have a good base. That being said, don't sign up for one that's going to happen a week before your marathon. Based on my training, this hike was probably the cutoff in time for me. It blended well with where I was in my marathon training because it was about 6 weeks out before the marathon. And I probably wouldn't do one any closer than that. If you do one while training, just be mindful of where the hike falls in that training because you still need to get those long runs in. If you don't have any other races scheduled though, and this challenge speaks to you, I totally recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely different than a race. There's no spectators unless they go to like an aid station. Also, I had company with me, and that's how I would prefer to always do it. But a lot of people did it on their own, and that surprised me. I was glad I had my girl with me, but if you go on your own, that mental game really is going to be grueling. So bring headphones or whatever you need to get through it. You are truly on your own. Even with company, it was like giving birth, while it was happening. There were a lot of times it was awful. But now I'm recommending it and looking forward to my next one. So if you're interested in more information, follow the link below to the Mammoth March website. And if you have questions about whether it's something that you should be doing based on your running life, go ahead and shoot me an email and I will answer any questions that you have from a coaching perspective. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the run or the hike.